So I am going to begin, and let me pin myself and welcome you all to another wonderful evening of poetry with the wider workshop for publishing poets, PoemWorks community. And we have two fabulous poets, one of whom will be shared amongst several of us to be read in memory. And I want to start out by saying that Carl Jung, he said something that I found kind of interesting. Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge.
Well, that's great.
And Friedrich Nietzsche said, the higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly.
Mm.
Just do that again, Richard.
And the perfectionist Gustave Flaubert said, I spent the morning putting a comma in, and in the afternoon, removing it. I know the feeling.
Do that with hyphens.
And Flaubert also said, it is a delicious thing to write, to be no longer yourself, but to move in an entire universe of your own creating. Today, for instance, a man and woman, both lover and mistress, I rode in a forest on an autumn afternoon under the yellow leaves, and I was also the horses, the leaves, the wind, the words my people uttered, even the red sun that made them almost close their love-drowned eyes.
Beautiful.
And finally, Louise Bogan says, I think this might really apply to tonight, at first we want life to be romantic, later to be bearable, finally to be understandable.
We never get that, do we?
We can try. We'll try as hard as we can tonight. So I want to introduce our fabulous first featured poet, friend Lindsay, and she's just published her 6th volume of poetry, The Snow's Wife, which was released last fall from Carey Press. Her awards include the May Swenson Award, Perugia Prize, Benjamin Saltman Award, Washington Prize, Missouri Poetry Prize, as well as fellowships from the NEA and Mass Cultural Council. Her work has appeared in Best American Poetry in countless periodicals, including the Yale Review, Atlantic Monthly, Plume, Salamander, Field, and Harvard Review. Frannie teaches workshops on the poetry of grief and trauma. She's also a classical pianist. Please welcome Frannie.
Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful not only to see you, but to hear you. I love this auditory sense of your presence. So thank you for, Richard, thank you for the welcome and for the round of applause. I'm delighted to be here. And so I'm going to start. This book, The Snow's Wife, is in memory of my husband who died 3 years ago. And in some ways, it's in memory of caregiving itself. I'm not going to talk very much between the poems. I'm just going to read them. I think they sort of speak as one thing. The first poem I'm going to read is called Falcon. Falcon. Your body lay alone with its readiness. We shared our bright, harsh peace with the air of the porch, the sun, a gentle stranger. The squirrel you once shooed from the feeder snatched a white crust of your sourdough. We laid our palms down in your sternum's precipice. We rested our hands in your silent white hair, on your ears and your white, unfeeling fingers. We dried the tear that remained on your cheek. We opened the drapes. We opened the cupboards. There were your goblets, the rest of your whiskey, your pocked birthday spoon, clean tea towels folded asleep, and your bathrobe tall on its hallway hook. On the bedside table, water stood in its cup. Your thirst had stopped. The Christmas cactus put forth a blossom. Your King James Bible perched on its chestnut stand like a falcon, wings opened wide to Isaiah.
Oh,
Once I watched a female peregrine swoop on a field mouse. I watched some boys swoop on a muddy red frisbee. Their clean hair glistened. In the white chapel, an amateur choir fumbled an anthem's opening notes. The peregrine came to rest on a birch tree's scarred white arm. It shook with her sudden weight. Some dry leaves fluttered with afterlife. She came for her lonesome feast, her labor of snapping the still moist bones. In the harsh and bright noon's peace, she tore and ate.
Hmm. Gorgeous.
mm,
Wow.
beautiful.
Bead. I still have the shirt he wore to the doctor the day she took both his hands and looked into his milky eyes and told him, as if it were some kind of blessing. None of us cried, none of that. Instead, we sat in an awkward huddle and skimmed the scan report, all 7 single-spaced pages, making no sense, especially to him who swore to God that a life was a string of beads made of single bright days, and all you needed to do to be happy was thread them. Now and then, hold your strand up to whatever light there was, but always keep a firm grip on the bead you were passing your red string through that very moment.
Mm.
Then go back to your stringing and go back again until they were gone.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
In November, everything departs. Behold the sunshine draping its already weary cloak over the noontime pond. Behold the peregrine's gaze, clear of rumor, the brambled railroad track at the end of Wander. Behold the black dog watchfully curled around the soup bone she's worried down to its lifeless gleam, the plaid shroud of her blanket. I have been willing the finches to fall silent and join the sullen wet of the leaves, willing, my friends, to keep out of the way, stars to keep out of the way of the night clicking along its rainy avenue. But behold, too, the bosomy gloom of libraries, the lamps so earnest and adequate over the little desks. I can bear to look as happiness fades from its tedious season. I can endure each vesper bell tonguing against its brave lip, the thrill in words like reckon, atone, and widow, how they are one another's encrypted siblings, the things they know, the things they hope in.
Mm. Mm. Wow.
Brushing the horse. I am tired of praying for a world not ours to break. The hushed hawk sweep, blackly lifting 200 schoolgirls into the breathless Nigerian moonlight. The 14-year-old who has murdered his beautiful algebra teacher. For the soft-eyed extinctions, we age in the glare of the news. Give me instead the floor of a barn in the gray of heaven, wet with the scuttle of hand-fed rabbits, their twitch and trust. Give me sparrow's wings scattering hay, the gentle chill of the rafters, the tumbled and redolent towels for carrying peahens back to their safe, dim coops. The hinges arthritic with rust, a cracked bar of soap by the cold water sink, the sun going in like a wife who needs to peel the potatoes, the last truck gone for the day, a plaid shirt draped on a gate, a broom whose bristles flip like the hair of a girl who is ready to go to the Friday dance at the Grange. Give me a roan mare's cheek, the smell of apple, of patience. This next poem um, is about being around my husband's deathbed. Golgotha. Then they came and cleansed you, my love, with a separate sponge for each arm, each hand and its citizen fingers, each leg and each foot pale as magnolia, and swept a burst of holy wind through your hair for ease of travel. And then they anointed one of your kerchiefs with tap water and made new your chest and belly and blurred your sex. Then they gathered their competent shadows, and turned you, muscled with tender indifference, your boulder of pain, onto a kinder place, and smoothed you and pressed upon your tongue a Eucharist of ice, and raised the blinds on the wild and sleeping day. This is one I never read, but I'm going to read it tonight. Unction. At last, you became less sick, skin feverless, hummingbird pulse, as fewer visitors laid their palms against your cheek, as your sleep turned back into the Saturday weather of meadows, and your thirst a mountain brook's bright March trickle, as the words you had loved darted forth like the musicless gray of moths over the evening wind, and your hands, the caves in which mine still burrowed, gave up the last of their comfort and grew dim for the night. This next poem is in honor of my husband's daughter, who I grew very close to and was very, very much a presence and a support at the end of his life. This is The Rabbits of Upland Road. You were going to lose everything. The funeral home will show up to gather your father beneath a velvet shroud. The red potatoes will sprout in their basket inside the window. Someone will wash and fold the bedding and give it away. The neighbors' visits will stop. The art will assess at barely a fraction, and then you will run out of boxes. The plants will wither. No one will want the rare books. In time, your handwriting too will tie itself into mad tangles. You will never be granted the mercy you pled for. Your hoarse voice will startle you. But look, 2 brown rabbits have popped naively out from behind the lilacs. In their lovely, identical eyes rests the gem of everyday trust. It needs no faceting. Then the evening blinks, although it is nowhere near dark, and leaves you alone with just enough thanks to tear off one more. And I'm gonna wind down with some new poems. One I didn't think I was going to read, and then as you all gathered, I decided I would read it, and it will be the poem with which I close. This is a little poem called Sunset. For once, they aren't drinking. Instead, they are taking each other's clothes off with balletic awkwardness, as if they knew exactly how frightened to be by joy. Then letting them drift, the drab and precisely tailored trousers, the crayon bright skirt, slowly out any window willing to open. And this is a very new poem. I just workshopped it last night.
That's great.
One should never say that at a reading, but
The icing has
voila.
been hardened.
This is called Jackknife. What more can be said of the young birch leaves glittering lazily over the cabin locked after 50 years, where a woman to this day wearing the same red skirt flips 3 eggs over easy at once, hand clasped round her scorched potholder, where a girl in a damp swimsuit just up from the lake won't ever care if her hair drips over her plate, while she swears again she has just perfected her jackknife off of the float, fingers first slicing the night still water so she can vanish beneath the adult silver dark, just as she does every morning. And thank you all so much for gathering together here. I loved Alan too. I wasn't going to read this, but I will. This is a poem called Caregiver's Prayer. Now, God, lay your hands upon our hands that long to heal our precious friend. Bless our limits as you tenderly surpass them. Assure us that we are enough, are loving and are touching in the meager ways we love and touch. And when our kin and labors summon us again from our beloved side, come close, dim this chamber's tired lamps, then flood it with your radiance and rest. Thank you so much for listening and being here. It's a great pleasure.
I think the pleasure is ours.
I felt a holiness as if I was in church when you were reading, Frannie. It was just
Right.
so moving. I just was
Thank you so much.
hanging on to every word. I wish that services in the places where I go were as moving and touching and personal
Oh,
as
thank
you
you.
are.
Definitely a ministry of poetry, or a poetry of ministry.
It really is.
I remember reading one of your poems. I think it was in Salamander, and you mentioned Berwick Street, near where we both lived.
Oh, yeah.
And I was
Just
like, it was like the
right,
specificity.
right on your corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a job of poets, to name things, to spell
Yeah.
things out, and you build a kind of architecture of grief, and you have the poetry of bird language. There's something about birds that is so special to your poetry.
Oh, thank you.
Something about how they're so amphibious, and they're in two realms. They're earthbound, but they're also skyward.
Well, I think of inspiration as a bird that flies into your house by accident, and all of a sudden there's this panicky bird, and you have to help it. Your life's work suddenly is to help this bird. And
Yeah.
That's what writing to me is about,
Mhm.
is helping the bird.
Mhm. Mhm.
Definitely
Good one. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
don't have and make things known that would otherwise be left unknown.
Mhm.
I love that account of inspiration, Franny. It's a striking kind of sense of it, and it contrasts in a nice way with the quality of your poems that I noticed just now as you read, and other times when I've heard you read, where there are these very kind of soft, somewhat muffled, and almost inaudible sounds of cloth, whether it's a shirt or a garment or a sheet. There's something about the way cloth shows up in your poems as a
Interesting.
theme. It has a quality that goes into that kind of softness bordering on the sadness that you tap into of grief. So it celebrates that sadness and that softness and the quietness, like the near inaudibleness of what happens, I think, when we open to grief and stay with it a while,
Mhm.
where it doesn't become so strident or so overwhelming, but where it kind of quietly tucks us in.
Mhm.
Beautifully well said, Gary. Yeah,
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much.
if it was a musical piece, it would be a nocturne.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
We're going to gently move on to the work of Alan Albert. His book of poetry, Fragments of the Natural, was published in 2015 by Word Tech Communications in Cincinnati, Ohio. His work appeared in American Poetry Review, Black Warrior Review, California Quarterly, Cortland Review, Grub Street, Kansas Quarterly, Madrona, Mass Poetry, Mercy of Tides, Poems for a Beach House, Mississippi Review, New Infinity Review, Obras, Poetry East, Poetry Now, Santa Clara Review, Worcester Review, and elsewhere. He was a member of the Iowa Writers Workshop as well as Workshop for Publishing Poets. He received his MA in English and Creative Writing from the University of California, Davis, where he studied with Carl Shapiro and Sandra Gilbert. And we're going to have several of us sharing poems from his book and elsewhere. And I'm going to begin by reading a poem called Paul and Wendy. I call everyone Paul or Wendy, so it is easier to remember names now. When I'm at a party, I don't want to have to remember anyone's name, as it is either Paul or Wendy. I have 4 brothers. They are all called Paul. One woman I know has 8 sisters. They are named Wendy. This way, all my patients are either Paul or Wendy, and you, my dear, are Wendy. My son is Paul. My ex-wife, Wendy. There is President Paul and Pope Paul again. So easy to live my life now. So much I don't have to think about anymore. If there is a woman who is complaining, I know her name is Wendy. And if it's a man, his name is Paul. I won't ever have to worry or to write to whom this may concern, as it will always be either Paul or Wendy. Dear Paul or Wendy, I practice, it has come to my attention that, and so forth, and so on.
That's great.
This is called the New Marriage Primer. How many marriages can you put inside of a 5-pound paper bag? If one marriage leaves Chicago at 4 o'clock in the morning, traveling 55 miles per hour, and another marriage leaves Minneapolis at 6 o'clock the next night, traveling at, say, 87 miles per hour, when will they meet? And will they find dinner waiting for them? Every marriage is there to an equal and opposite remarriage. And the square of the hypotenuse of a marriage is equal to the square of the sum of its two partners. If I am not for marriage, who am I? And if I am only for marriage, what am I? And if not now, why then?
Good.
And lastly, here's time on earth. There is someone right now in love. There is someone, a homeless man and woman, and there is an aunt and uncle, someone madly loving another in darkness, madly feeling skin and bone. There is a baby being born. There is a mother suffering, the father viewing, the baby's head itself coming into view. There is the envying sort, just hating the rich, and there is the rich man dying of liver cancer and not caring much about being rich. You can't get out of this no matter how hard you try at getting out of it or try to control it in your own dumb ways. You can reach for the stars, but you can't dig in the snow if it has been raining. And you can play on the beach for hours if no one bothers you, but you can't play if it is too cold and you're sad in the rain. You only have so much to give in this life. So all I'm saying is live it and know only one thing can happen after another. And there's nothing you can really do to stop the one thing after anothering. No matter how much you push and stick your hand out to stop the sun from rising, the tide from moving, it won't work. Go to bed now and dream well at last. Call me in the morning. Hold on to me. Speak. Talk with me as much as you can for as long as you can, because we can't stop this as long as we both shall live. Don't let my body fly away.
Mm.
Now we're going to hear from Wendy Drexler.
Thank you, Richard. Wow, that last poem, incredible. Reminds me a little bit too of Frannie's poem about stringing the beads one after the other and holding the thread. Yeah,
That's right.
gorgeous poem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard, for organizing this reading, and Frannie, thank you. Your poems are just gorgeous, and your images. I just so admire how you just keep drilling down to the smallest detail and make it speak so meaningfully toward the theme and the feeling of grief. Beautiful. I'm going to begin with Alan's poem Memoir. Was it flannel you wore standing next to your desk, looking down at your turquoise high book, setting up a print of a few pages for me to take with me? Flannel or some other kind of soft fabric, a blend, not special. I think it was your posture and attention to the screen and the keyboard, the care for your own words, the intention, the effort to shape your life that caught me. And flannel, a soft comfort, given the pains and aches of maybe not finding life where you reach for it. I could see your head look down to the desk. You wanted to give me a piece of your work and asked me to wait a few more seconds for the printing. I don't know why your gray pants struck me then, your solitary effort, how these things somehow matched with our deep kissing. You needed to complete your memoir, you said. I agreed. And when your leg was crossing over mine, our bodies half under the blankets, I felt the legs themselves were kissing, our whole bodies saying hello to your flannel and the memoir, our good words, memories now being formed in the skin, the breathless details of desire, and the screen itself, the printed pages being born, and what they held, and what we loved. Fragments of the natural. I like thinking that the heart is a simple thing with little requests and a dear face, that the heart has a certain knowledge of language which may take you upward, that the heart is a strong machine that pulls us upward. Before I differ with this little thing, let me tell you a short story. This morning when I got up, I saw the pine needles weeping. There were tiny, tiny globes of rain at the ends of each one. They were drooped and cold, having been outside all night while I was sleeping in worry. I had lived all night in that pain, and at the end of each of my fingers there was evidence that water takes us downward, that there is a downward just as there is an upward. Last night the pine needles gathered as friends in a small group and looked in on me from outside my bedroom window. They said, "Dear, dear." They said, "Oh, my." They hollowed out a space and took their places on the window sill and smiled, looked and prayed in a thoughtful choir. I am proud of them that they did that. That I have such friends makes me glad, happy that everywhere I go there are pine needles and leaves, fragments of the natural. That's a great poem. And this is the last poem. This is the last poem in Alan's book called Endnotes for a Poem with My Other Name. 1. My girlfriend says she has to mow her lawn, so she has to go home, and I understand, as I have to do my laundry, and it's important to me too. I let these things pass as structures which need to be around and invisible to help us both. 2. She says, who needs to be a wife? Just because you're a wife doesn't mean that prevents anyone from having sex with somebody else. It just means you're a wife. It is not known if wife is capitalized in this context. 3. At the reading last night, I heard the man say, the flower blooms by itself. This confirms above. Conversations continue to bloom with enough fairness and the spice of good faith to make them light, never depressing. 5. A conversation when my girlfriend was in Jerusalem, packing around, waiting for her friend to arrive from the U.S., gave me the sense that she was all right being alone, walking and waiting, and was all right rooming with her talkative and strong-willed friend. 6. On first meeting, she said, having been asked to say something about herself, that she was good-natured. This proof continues. See above as well as below. 7. Coherence appears to happen luckily. 8. Being busy, we don't see each other that much. That may mean being busy is key and that, all things being equal, still requires remembering important dates and events and listening a few percentage points better next time. 9. All things being equal doesn't make much sense in number 8 or, for that matter, anywhere. It isn't known why it is used with such alacrity. It is smooth now owing to its widespread use. 10. The word wife is of course a better word than the word girlfriend. Swifter, more elegant, useful as both a divisor and numerator. 11. After we met, after the beginning of the middle, or the beginning of the middle. 11. After we met, after the beginning of the beginning, or the beginning of the middle, or near the middle of the middle, we began to talk about the meaning of many of the shorter words.
Good.
Such wit.
Yeah.
It is classic Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next, we have Margot Wazanski.
Oh.
I'm glad to be here with all of you. And Frannie, your reading was lovely. The invention of loneliness. There were 3 German physicists reportedly working on the problem at the same time. One of them, Crop, came up with a way of leaving the tears out. Another, Russell, was beginning to understand sweets and their relationship to recovering. Duncan, the third, discovered a new filament which would allow a more reliable depletion of energy. The person actually credited with the invention of low-cost marketing of what we now refer to as the Big I was Edgar Bulla, a worker at Crive, a small manufacturing plant in Wilmington. He had found a way to affix invisible ribbons of sadness to the newborn.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
The above average tree. Then it was that the bark was jealous and couldn't look at the color of the other trees. It felt below average and wanted to stay home at night and not go to a party. I want a branch just like that one. I want more green at my top. It was clear from the beginning about the pollen getting to one flower and not the other. Much pollen, some better, some worse. Inside the horrible stump rings, it was the most painful there, seeing how others were more golden and rounder. Fair intentions couldn't change any of the distributions of the elm or oak. Some taller, some shorter, fuller, sweeter in a breeze. One elm or another.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Love it.
The janitor's life. I hate to tell you, but I see myself in the janitor's life. Parked off the beach by a few blocks, typing poems in my apartment on the second floor. I hate to tell you this since it seems you see me in some college teaching or in some other job where I'm clean and safe. I see myself coming home after 8 hours of dusting, waxing, cleaning, finally resting, listening to the water, glad about the pastel walls of my building, letting every friend I know progress toward offspring and money. I know this may not set well with my family, who you are, but I can tell you I work in an office now and wear a tie and tie my shoes and smile when necessary and get to work. But I feel as a janitor must feel, sweeping things up, going over chores, reporting to the boss. And the water is pretty on the shore and pretty on the boat bows at night when it looks like young ghosts with light wands.
Mhm.
Gorgeous. Thank you, Margot.
Mhm.
Now, Gray Held.
I, um, it's I'm really always felt the humor in Alan's poems, but I'm just so engrossed in the humanity of them tonight,
Mm.
and also the wisdom of them.
Mhm.
So it's been really wonderful to hear them read aloud, so that I can get that wonderful mix from his work again.
Mm-hmm.
The roads are long. They are highways. No one crosses the street for fear of being hit. The roads do not go into the mountains. The mountains are protected behind the haze. The helicopters come to the Marine base. They land there in the haze. The Marine base looks like a mirage. It is an experience to see the huge hangar in the charged haze. I don't have to do anything today. The haze takes over. I am no one. The haze takes over. If I were burning leaves as I did as a boy, the smoke would mix with the haze and the haze would darken. Yesterday, I saw the bright doctor. He had haze in his kit. I coughed, and he told me he could give me some haze and nothing else. Accepted that and sat down when he left. At night, the empty sky replaces the haze. The muscles in my back tell me I am holding on. The stars break through the skin. The stars are walking with their canes. They are never holding on. One and two. This morning in bed, my eyes looking, I thought one is not two. Two is maybe closer to saturation, a wound of abundance. It is an even. One can fall off a boat. Two can rescue one from drowning. Of course, one can push one off a boat. One is happy. Two may be happy, but two needs to be happier than one in order to be two. One is a world of good thinking. Two may not need to think. One needs more time. Two is one waiting and one feeling rushed. Two is one naps, one sits. One can be glorious and splendid. Two can be more like a prism of light scattered over a lawn or a life. Letter to Susan. Dear Susan, thank you for noticing the spring buds, yellow on twigs and branches, and for calling my cell phone, which I would pick up with my hand and listen to what you saw. The air, the spring patches of daylight blasting our eyes as we tried opening them toward middle spring. You are good to call me about the seeing and looking. You said you felt better today than you did last night, having talked with me, having me listen to you about your last boyfriend, whom you still think about. Of course, we think about our others who have known us inside our lives, the context, our branches on the plane of living, spring on our faces, summer on our bodies, and the next year with winter on our skin. We may not have much time left as we think of getting older, wanting to die quickly when we have to, if possible, not linger in the ghost float of depression, moving out to the edge. My father died in January 2 years ago, in clean white of a hospital room, attended by paid strangers. The family visited the old man through the falling. I was with him at his almost last, then went out to call a friend. When I came back, he was gone, and we sat by his body's boat. Nieces, nephews, grandchildren, son, his wife. In still early winter, budless, the soul vanishing as rapidly as the wind in the world, gone true north, joining the mob of welcoming healers. I hoped by then they would find him.
His body's boat. Gorgeous. Well, speaking of, here is Sue.
Thank you, everyone, for such a beautiful reading. And thank you, Frannie, also. Your work never ceases to move me, and the depth and tenderness of it are beautiful and painful. So thank you for your work. Just continues to plumb the depths of our experience. And it's so beautiful to hear all the different voices read Alan's work. I know that he would love this. he was very connected to this group and to Barbara. He took classes on and off for years, and also did the free write many years. So this has been an important place for him to develop his work and then to read his work, and he was very fond of you all, and would really love to hear his work read so beautifully and with so much tenderness and love. So I appreciate it too. Just, it's, every time I read the book or read the poems, I just discover more and more about his work, because, you know, at first reading, you can be seduced by the wit or the humor or the kind of Kafkaesque quality of it, but then he can just go, he can dig deep in just a few words and really encapsulate some kind of truth about living that was uniquely his vision. So that's one of the things that I miss so much about him, is the singularity of how he saw and expressed what he experienced in the world. So I'm going to read two poems only, and I'm going to read one that's not published that he wrote that has to do with his illness. It's called The Commute. Between my chair and the gray of the kitchen floor, there is one threshold if you go to the left through the hallway, and two if you go into the dining room and then to the kitchen. These kinds of decisions mean something to someone who is walking in a different way, using a metal cane and leaning forward just enough to balance like a squirrel leaping branch to branch, or bird on a shoot. You don't want to catch your foot. It doesn't take much to drop one part of your body, the slightest, to collapse like a let-go marionette. This does not bode well for the facts of life that begin at the beginning and end at the end. I am among the first in my circle to spy well on the horizon and lead on a path universal, worn as dirt or bubbling, breathless and clarified.
Stunning.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And this one is from the book. Instructions for you about me. Don't be surprised when I say something that doesn't make sense, or when one name is substituted for another that isn't the name, or for that matter, a star misplaced where a planet should be, the right fork going with the wrong knife, clothes left too long in the dryer, water boiled over or milk, memory scrambled, mermaids considered human only, clocks turned sideways. It won't be heaven and it won't be hell, and I'll call you, impersonate someone just like me, but not yet. And when seeing the light, seeing blue or red, one size too big, one size too small, don't take no for an answer. I'll call you back, believe me. About you, I will also have instructions. My hair will go this way and that, as does yours, I might add, as you receive waves from out there, I believe.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Susan,
Thank you, Susan.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ah, I remember when we were at Porter Square Books, and or maybe it was Newtonville Books, and you and Alan alternated reading. It was a kind of his and her evening of poetry, which was wonderful.
I remember that too. It was a lovely, lovely time.
Mm. Well, we're going to launch into the open mic, and we're going to start out with Marco Wizanski.
Luncheon of the boating party after Renoir. Wednesdays, I'd leave college for the Phillips collection, where I imagined I was Alphonsine, daughter of the proprietor of Restaurant Fournaise above the Seine, leaning on the porch rail over the water, observing the party, not in the scene or out, after tending to Renoir's friends from the boat. Such a silly scene, but charming. My brother and Kayabot stripped to their undershirts, showing off their gleaming biceps. Most of the other men looked neurasthenic, unsubstantial, suited up, top-hatted, fedoraed, overdressed for a day this warm. And the women in jaunty hats, I wear my supple straw, a slight mist softening their features, playing their parts, the flirters, the ones flirted upon, the ones who aren't amused. One man tries to catch my eye, like the boys imported for the obligatory college mixers, none of whom, I was certain, would care about my fascination with a French pendant. None who'd be moved by the quality of light on my skin. After a few non-starter conversations, I left and never tried another. Did I belong at that college with girls whose ethnicities were indistinguishable, on a path predetermined, a diamond ring by graduation, girls who captured sunlight on foil discs to tan their faces, while I struggled to capture sunlight on canvas? I didn't know any girls like the two roommates in my dorm who were clearly in love and couldn't reveal themselves. Or the girl I glimpsed shaving between her breasts every morning, and the one who, for some reason, collected every butt she smoked in a huge jar, giving her end of the hall the fetid odor of an ancient bar. Was it any wonder I fled to the Fournaise on Wednesdays to lunch with the sun-stippled crowd?
Wow.
It's good.
That's Margot.
That's your lady, right?
Lovely.
Next, we have David Miller.
Right. Hello, everyone. You know, I want to say that I never had the good fortune of knowing Alan Albert, so I'm particularly grateful to hear this tribute, but also this selection. So thank you all for that. And for Frannie, I always appreciate the chance to listen to you once again. So thank you too. So this poem is titled Self-Portrait, and it is in two moderately brief parts. One is called Right Eye and the other is Left Eye, just as a little heads up. So, self-portrait, right eye. Tiny lightning scar, a flesh dent exactly at this one's outer canthus. At 5, I chased my brother around the piano bench, giggling little boy hysterics sliced short with slip and smash against a sharp corner. Only those closest to me have seen my gash. I shudder in stray moments with my terrified parents, whose first child just barely didn't lose his eye, wasn't on his back with a bloody socket. left eye. The lid droops to match my father's. My lopsided gaze shocked back from his late life studio portrait, a holiday surprise from the widower to his sons. His smile, so tight stretched, clenched full of teeth, horrible rictus below, half shut. I thought, oh, Dad, oh, dear, you didn't have to do that. It centered the piano lid until his death. Sheet music propped to wall away that grin behind the glass. His dropped lid answering mine. Thank you.
That's good.
David.
Mm,
And now, Rick Ribstein.
Thank you for all the wonderful poetry I've been hearing. This is called My Cousin. My cousin, who has had a hard life, called. I'm one of only a very small group of people she can call. She has exhausted the patience of so many. They don't know, who are now past caring, that for the past year, she has been calm and stable. Her tone is lucid. There's a complete absence of rage. She can laugh, a great, deep, hearty laugh that I have always loved. Not that long ago, she had disappeared, caused the police to contact family members, been repeatedly hospitalized and discharged. It was 50 years ago that my parents were out and I answered the phone, and she was hallucinating and pleading for help. Earlier in this new stable period, she told me how much she enjoyed writing. I asked her to send me stories. She couldn't manage it. She could no longer manage email, nor writing and putting a stamp on an envelope. She read them to me over the phone. They were simple, clear, innocent. So when she called just now out of loneliness to hear someone's voice and was looking back over her life, seeing it more clearly, as she has been doing lately, seeing herself at long last, I suggested that she write about that. She said, you know how babies cry and people pick them up? Imagine a baby cries and nobody comes. Nobody comes. And then someone comes and picks her up and slaps her. My life is a series of bitter memories, she said. It hurts too much to write about it. And then she talked about it. I remember my cousin when she was young. She had birds that flew inside the house. As she talked, her pain was unavoidable. I listened from long forgotten rooms of my childhood so that I could bear it.
oh,
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Thank you. Wow.
Next, we have Meg Turner.
Hello, and thank you all for this fine poetry tonight. This poem is called Statuesque. It's a series of postures executed just fast enough to trick the eye into seeing a single gesture. The uplifted palm, the stilled foot, elongated, like the endless limbs of bronze burghers hemmed in by the museum courtyard. Chestnut leaves unzip in the pennyweight sun, coat riding boots and walking shoes in the pea gravel. The local women narrow their eyes over tea and watch two children with book bags poke at a fallen nest made of steel wool and twigs, the abandoned home of mechanical birds, beaks opening to their mechanical call. My knees sink down, creaking sheet music, sing in unison. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from, but not see, Pam Gem.
Thanks, Richard. To Susan and Alan's friends and family, wishing you peace and blessings. It was beautiful to hear his words tonight, and Frannie, your words as well. I mean, wow, what a moving evening. So thank you. This poem is called The Runaway. Now you see me, now you don't. Miles of wayfaring, naysaying danger, cars splashing, half full puddles that splatter me into mudlark. Skip me down the road, lull me gullible, fringe unbridled roughshod, insouciant school skipper who flits up the pike, living on my dreamed up glitz. I'll get a ride from my own dumb luck, past pasture's silver gilt, knock me over guardrails. I'm rain-soaked, I'm the factory, the warehouser, where paper is pithed to pulp, rolled out, laid down, wide-ruled, black-inked, cursive, scratch, scrawl, slant. I'm innocent, yoked into daily color of the Nashua River's veiled voila of larklight. No caution sign, I'm blooming skin, roundkin, bee-stung, honeycomb. Thank you.
Laminate. Lam Pam. Next up, we have Jonathan Abel.
Hey. Oh.
You're good.
Yeah, I have to find my right window.
Oh, okay.
This is called Ships Passing in the Cove. Where the beach curve folds inward, Salt Bay mingles with Fresh Cove. And a creek crosses just as he arrives, a man in white shorts and polo shirt on the opposite bank, only one good stepping stone between us. A silent minute's hour, then he waves, invites me to step first, then his turn. Silvered hair, blue waters ruffled, green marsh grasses. If only I had a camera. I'd want to take this feeling, this man, as if he were my father, as if we could spend a beach day flying a kite, our hands on the string, but I turn and meander inland until there's nowhere dry to step. And backwards returning, my sudden friend pushing off his metal dory. Tide's coming in, he comments, unships his oars and rows up cove.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Do we have any other open mic readers that I have not heard from? Any takers? If not, I have one that I will close with. Let's see. This is called, and thanks to Frannie for reading something so fresh and new. This is my latest. The icing hasn't hardened yet. Growth. Creation is so full, sometimes a word fails to describe it. Could I even write a poem as intricate as a pine cone? I've learned a person can still grow when they're the only one in the room. Always the same. Do I change myself into a stone or a sprout? The most romantic thing anyone ever said to me was look. Grief is recurrent, like malaria. I want to be thickly settled. Once I slept under Emily Dickinson's tombstone, the one with the words, called back. I am not defective. I know someday I will be held again.
Beautiful. Very nice.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Please feel free to speak your tributes and wonderment at all that we've experienced this very special evening. Just
Thank you, Richard, for putting this together. And
Yes.
Thank you
thanks
so much, Richard.
Mhm.
Oh, what a wonderful evening.
Healed. And I'm someone who has had open heart surgery, so I know what I'm talking about.
Oh. Mm.
Thank you, Frannie, for your poems. Thank
Oh,
you,
thank
everybody,
you,
for reading.
Gary.
Right.
Thank
Mm.
you, Susan, for bringing Ellen into our midst again in some
Yeah, oh, it's always,
way.
always so good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Richard and Gray and, everyone. I'm so glad that we could do this tonight. Thank you so much.
Mm.
I just love hearing Alan's work. I really love it.
I know.
Thank you so much for being here with us. It's been, less than 2 months since Alan came to Vail.
Yeah. Mm.
Thank you for being with us.
It was a beautiful evening.
Mhm.
It really was. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll go away with the image of Alan pondering the floor and the 2 ways to get into the room
That's right.
and the threshold and the challenge and the just that image will stay with me for tonight for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You must be Paul, and next to you is Wendy.
That's right.
Thank you, Gray, for naming what you named about Alan's poetry of the wit and the humor that's so available and accessible, and then the humanity. I love the way you named that, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It was so rich in his work.
Mm.
Oh, thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Night. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Wow, Susan, much love to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Wow.